being in the form of God and equality with God are now being contrasted when he emptied himself. Emptied himself of what? That's the question. What did he empty himself? But he emptied himself. He didn't retain equality with God, but he emptied himself. Well, what did he empty himself of? Equality with God. It's right there in the text, right? So the point that is being made here is that the prize that he's talking about, that which is held tightly, is something he already had. So he already had equality with God before. Now he empties himself of his equality with God, which again has to do with his ontological nature, that is his divinity. The modern Trinitarians do not teach that the Son divested himself of his divine nature in order to become fully human. That's what kenosis teaches. Modern Trinitarians do not believe that. They deny that. Instead, they claim that he didn't divest himself of anything at all. In reality, he simply added human flesh to his person. So he was still a divine being, but now he's sort of cloaked in human flesh, in humanity, right? So he's really two natures in one person, which, I mean, logically, it's complete nonsense if you try to figure out how does that even work, especially when it comes to the temptation of Christ. How was Christ tempted in all points as we are, yet without sin, Hebrews says, yet the Bible says God cannot be tempted with evil, nor does he tempt any man in the book of James, right? So you have that problem. So then you have to figure out, well, how was Jesus' flesh being tempted, but his actual person was not being tempted? Well, that's not really being tempted in all points as we are, right? We're tempted in all points, or he's tempted in all points as we are, because we're tempted in ways where we can sin, where we can easily give in to sin. If he was tempted in all points as we are, then he had to have the same weaknesses that we have, right? So, but if he's a divine being, if he's God cloaked in flesh, now he can't possibly sin because of his divine nature. So you got that problem. Then you got the other problem of his death, right? How can a divine, immortal God person who's clothed in flesh, how can he die for sin? How can he die, right? Well, he didn't really die. His flesh suit died. You get all this mishmash going on as far as what kind of a person he was, which doesn't make any sense. And it starts actually delving off into what I would call Gnosticism by having this dual-natured person. You may notice I have becoming here. Some translations have coming in the likeness of men or something along those lines. And you won't find many translations that have becoming in the likeness of men here. And the reason you won't find them is because they're done by Trinitarians, and Trinitarians are playing games with the text almost as bad as Unitarians do with regard to this passage. And it's because in the modern Trinitarian scenario, Jesus did not actually empty himself of his divinity in order to become fully human. He didn't do that. He simply added flesh to what he already was. He's a totally different concept, right? But that's the modern Trinitarian view, which comes from Catholicism, which comes from Greek philosophy and some influences. Becoming in the likeness of men is what he did is what occurred as the result of emptying himself. Now that makes perfectly good sense. The likeness of men is humanity. If he is emptying himself of the likeness of God, that is, he's emptying himself of the divine nature, then becoming in the likeness of men is describing his new nature that he assumed when divesting himself of the divine nature, right?